we couldn't, you can look around the room and understand why. So definitely the biggest event we've had in Minneapolis. So thank you all for attending. Again, this seems to be the theme this year, 2026. I think people are just super hungry for information, and the FutureCon events have been great. So we thank you all for being here. I have 2 winners for the surveys, as I promised. If you were filling out surveys, I'm going to do 2 more winners at the end of the day. You are going to get a $50 gift card. I'm going to announce your name. There's nothing you have to do. My team is just going to email you a $50 Amazon gift card. I have Andrea Olson from Best Buy. Are you in the room, Andrea? Andrea, I'm sure Andrea, all right. You just won $50. And then Andrew Hibbs from Northrop Grumman. Okay, congratulations. You both won $50. We love giving out prizes here. We have lots of prizes that we're going to still continue to give out. We have our spin wheel a few more times that we'll be doing today. And then the sponsors, they have many prizes that they're giving away, and they are very gracious on their prizes. I haven't had enough time yet because our schedule has been really tight, but I am going to read you what the sponsors are giving away. So if you haven't started your bingo card, you still have time to do that, and prizes will be given away at the end of the day. Another thing I failed to mention today, there's many people in here that are wearing yellow lanyards, and even sometimes the people wearing yellow lanyards are confused why they have a yellow lanyard. We have a honoree award ceremony we do right before the panel, and you're probably wondering, well, why me? We pull our database, and you could even see on the evaluations, we ask you if you have anyone you'd like to nominate as an honoree. I have a team that just looks and sees people that are shouted out on social media. So there's several different ways that you were picked to be an honoree today. We have roughly 20 to 25 honorees. We think everyone in this room, being a cybersecurity practitioner, is an honoree, but we can't award you all, but we like to just make sure that you all have a great time today, and we provide you valuable content that you can take back to your teams and keep us all safe in the industry, and we appreciate all your hard work. Back to the honorees again. We hope that you can stick around because it's going to be around 4 o'clock. We have a certificate and a little token of our appreciation for all your hard work. So with that being said, let me go ahead and introduce our keynote speaker. And if you're looking for seats, there's people in the back that are looking for seats. There are definitely seats in the very front of this room. I was hoping someone from my staff, Andrew, I have somebody right here looking for a seat, and there's lots up here that's just hard. It's hard to make the way to the front. Anyway, so let me go ahead and introduce our keynote speaker. If you have any questions at the end during his Q&A, please make sure that you wait for my tech team to come with the mic so he can answer your questions. So today I have Matthew Bohne, who is the Vice President, Chief Product Security Officer at Honeywell Corporate. At Honeywell, his leadership spans the full spectrum of product security, from leading the secure software development lifecycle to helping shape international cyber regulations to how to be compliant to them. His tenure has been marked by success deployment of comprehensive cybersecurity programs with a global team of over 290 product-focused cybersecurity experts, impacting all of Honeywell's diverse products and developers. His team is dedicated to security by design principles, has fortified Honeywell's cybersecurity posture on a global scale. His 20 years of expertise is deeply rooted in securing critical infrastructure and ensuring cybersecurity and privacy are woven into the fabric of product development, drawing on his CISSP certification, hands-on experience in securing nuclear, pharmaceutical, and industrial control systems. He's established robust security standards and cultivated a risk-formed approach, positioning Honeywell as a resilient leader in product security. Super excited to have him here today. Today he's going to be speaking on making the world a little better, more secure, lessons learned from designing, building, and running a global product security program. So everyone, let's welcome Matthew to the stage. Thank you.
Thanks. What a mouthful. Man, realize I've been doing this for a long time, and that, as you know, you sort of look at your history and you look back and man, all of us have done a lot in the whole cybersecurity space. So yeah, I wanted to thank you all for coming out to hear me speak, and I thought it'd be fun to spend some quality time. I know many of you, because we're all in some of the same communities. It's awesome, and so when we get together and chat, oftentimes the conversation is like, how does Honeywell do this, or how do we do it? And so I wanted to kind of bring forward kind of our program and just share it and give you guys a little background. And if you have some questions, happy to and sort of drive you through that. So, all right. So, yes, good. So, making the world a little more secure, right? That's kind of my own personal mission, and it's the mission of my team. And this will become more apparent as we get through this discussion today, that as you think about your own journeys, it's more than just, I work for Honeywell, or I work for Experian, or whomever. It's you have to have some other reason, some other justification for your passions, right? And for me, it's about making the world a little safer for my family, your families, all of our families, because our products go into most of the critical infrastructure that the world operates on. So it's kind of an important thing as we navigate that. So agenda, kind of high level. I thought I would talk a little bit about Honeywell, and then what does our program look like? And then some lessons learned through that process. So I thought might help you guys better understand sort of the challenges that we face and how we navigated that, because I thought, again, might be something that the folks would enjoy. And then we can hopefully have some time for questions. So Honeywell. So I can throw a spoon in this room, and there's a 50-50 chance I'm going to hit somebody whose mother, brother, sister, family member is a Honeyweller, right? And here's a little fact most of you didn't know. Honeywell has been in Minneapolis for 100 years this year. 100 years. You talk about something that's resilient, you talk about something that is durable, Honeywell, right? We have over 2,000 employees here in Minnesota, right? And most of those are right around here in Minneapolis area, right? I live here, and my team, part of my team is here. Honeywell's over a 120-year-old company. And as you can see, we've been doing automation since automation was something to do, frankly. And we started out in sort of the, thermostats and regulator things, but we took that and we drove that forward to process automation. And we're in aviation. All of you saw Artemis? Guess what's in Artemis? Honeywell systems. We're on every single thing that's left this planet that NASA has launched, right? And we're on most things that fly. We're in 85% of all the buildings on this planet, right? So, it's pretty extensive, and people don't think about it too much. They think, well, they're a thermostat company. We're a lot more than that. And we're, like I said, aviation, cockpit systems. We are the control systems that run power plants. And like I said, we're in so much of the critical infrastructure that runs the world, that keeps our water safe, keeps the energy, the lights on in the room, right? Now you understand why that passion around making the world a safer place for you, your family, my family, is important. Because it can't be just the job, right? It can't be. You got to do more. And when I think about, how our company has grown, right? It's $38 billion back in 2024, doing much better, and continues to grow. 100,000 employees. We're getting ready to make some changes and sort of do some splitting up the companies, which is great. We're all very excited about that. I'm sure you read about that. It's a journey, right? And I've been with Honeywell for about 10, almost 11 years. And that journey has been to bring them through the cybersecurity and to really, when I got on board, the issue was that they wanted to really make this a cornerstone of their program. They'd had some challenges and opportunities, like most companies, if not all companies in this room have had, and they wanted, somebody who can help solve that. So they brought me in. And as we navigated that, I started out with I think 7 or 8 people. Now I'm at closer to, actually that number that she mentioned is actually a little low. It's now 315. So that's all product security. That's not IT security, that's not infrastructure, that exclusively is product security. So you think, wow, that's a pretty significant commitment. Well, look at Honeywell. We have 100,000 SKUs. We have roughly 9,000 developers making product every day, 7 days. So it's a fairly big enterprise in that sense as well. We're a software company. So that's why we're built the way we are. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. But where I think I wanted to take you to is something I think we often forget. And this also supports why we have such a commitment and have had for some time. And that is, we're all here trying to learn and grasp and try to understand how we can, solve our own business security needs. But least we not forget, our adversary is an industry. Make no bones about it. Anybody who's got an industry worth $10.5 trillion, that's a business. That's not a hobby. And the reality is, that's who all of you and I are fighting against. And if we aren't putting our best foot forward, if we aren't articulating the right message to our leaders and our executives that exists, that's what we are working to protect them from, then we're missing the message. Right? And I think this is part of what we've got to all sort of grapple with, is there's the day-to-day grind of doing the gig, and then there's the reality of looking up and saying, wow, that's that's a big wave. And it's not getting smaller, it's not getting easier. And as you see, some of that is showing itself in things like, ransomware and all these other, some of it can be dealt with fairly easy, mundane things like, hey, teaching people to do passwords and reset their passwords and not use password 1 as their password, or, close your firewalls. And trust me, there's a bunch of low-hanging fruit, and all of you know where that is, right? And yes, we need to do more around that. But we also have to think about, how do we do this in our companies, and how do we drive the right intensity and drive with the right cadence to actually make change. Because it's great to sit up here and talk about it, but it only matters if it gets done, right? And so we deal with a lot of open source. And I'm sure if you're making software, which I know many of you, because I've looked at the list of all of you, many of your companies all make software. And you sell it or give it away with your products. Guess what? It better be secure. It's got to be secure. And are you invested in making sure it stays secure, right? Open source is a huge problem because almost every piece of software out there is using it. And the controls and managing that, and especially if you're talking cloud-enabled products, which I'm sure many of you have, right? there's a whole wash-repeat cycle you got to take care of. It's not I just patched it, that's good for 6 months. No, it's a everyday lifestyle that you have to consider. And the other point I want to bring up is, the regulators in this world recognize this problem, and they're doing something about it. Now, I've never been a fan of regulators helping me recognize I have a problem. It's usually never a good sign. So, this is one of those times where you want to sort of, especially if you're selling products outside of the US, right? Because you have things like the European Cyber Resiliency Act that's going into effect in December 2027. Happy to talk to you guys about that on a different time. We know we spend a lot of time with that. But that's going to change fundamentally how companies sell software to customers. Everything from your laptop, your phone, your TV, to a control system for a plant, to any piece of software will have a whole new set of requirements that are being promulgated down by European regulation and is supported by supposedly going to be 38 standards. Pretty substantial amount of work being done. Oh, and by the way, the UK, they're making a similar effort right now. That's going to be deployed soon. And you've got Australia and other countries around the globe doing this. This is not a minor sort of thing that you can all sort of hope and wait for. If you're selling and servicing customers in Europe, you have to do this. This is not a debatable topic. Now, I'll also add, oh, well, wait a minute. I don't make software for Europe. I just make stuff for the US. Okay, great. You ever heard of the thing called Brussels effect? If you want to know what that is, think about GDPR and privacy. GDPR rolled out of Europe about 7 years ago. And the effect of privacy and the deployment of privacy laws affected not just European products and products sold in Europe, it affected almost all software around the globe, including the software made here in the US, exclusively for the US. Why? Because it was easier for companies like mine and any other global company in the world to set one standard. And so we did it across the board. And guess what? That's also a competitive advantage as well, because I don't have to deal with differing regulations. I just do it all. High bar is what we call it. So our entire program at Honeywell, frankly, is what we call high bar, because that's what we live to, whatever the regulations, the highest regulations, what we do. In that same vein, as a software company that's exclusively in the United States, selling to the United States, you're going to see those things flow down through what's called the Brussels effect. And your customers and your competitors who are in those markets are going to increase their capability to meet that demand. And if you're not in there, that will be a differentiator. Whether you like it or not, it will be. But let's be honest. Why wouldn't you want to be secure, right? And so the questions come up, it's money and resources, and I have to have a big sale to get security paid for, and they're always cutting my budget. We'll get into that. But again, it's about a lifestyle change you need to make with your business, because, hey, $10.5 trillion industry, that's who you're competing against, you personally and all your security professionals in this room. And if you don't grasp that and help change that game, you're going to lose. So, okay, let's talk about my program. So like I said, I've been doing this for a while, doing actually product security for almost 30 years. So I was one of the second or third people ever to be sort of christened with that idea of Chief Product Security Officer. Guys over in Siemens were probably the first. They have a great program. My point in this is, I've been doing it a long time. And when you look at these chevrons, this is sort of the typical, as I see it, model of how product security should operate. Now, frankly, a lot of security functions operate in the same way, which is good. It's about really our mission. Our mission is about building better products through secure by design, by default, software development practices. And my team owns that and drives that and weaves that into each one of the businesses. Now, when you think about that in terms of also privacy and that security, it's not just security for us and our stuff, it's our customer security. And that's another way of also thinking about this. It's not just protecting your company, it's about protecting your customers' information and their needs, right? And then, as everybody knows, everybody's got an incident. There's nobody in this room that hasn't had an incident in their business somewhere, right? Something happens, right? And so our job is to manage those effectively and transparently. And why is that important? Because at the end of the day, this isn't my first rodeo, nor is it my first rodeo of my staff. But I bet it's the first rodeo of the guy who's got the problem. And they're often a little upset, a little concerned, maybe a little confused, very worried. Our job is to come in and help them. We know how to do this. This is how we handle it. This is how we handle interaction, sharing information. And we manage those with a great deal of transparency and professionalism, so everybody walks away feeling good about the experience and that we've navigated that issue effectively. So it is really important to us. It's again, part of our culture. Now, I'm going to show you the other side of that slide. So I'm part of legal. Anybody else in here part of legal? All right, 1. Okay, 2. All right. Wow, isn't that a weird place to be for product security? Right? Security at all, right? Actually, it's lovely. And this is coming from a guy who spent years in engineering, years, both on the nuclear side, oil and gas, all the way through, right? I've been part of engineering and IT, frankly, off and on. And what makes the difference in this model is it allows us to give us sort of what I call the two-man rule, right? We have the governance aspects, but when you go talk to the engineering teams, which do all our software development, they don't see us as legal at all. Many of them don't even know. They see us as other engineers, software developers, and they see us as partners in their work. They do not see us as legal. In fact, one of the things you have to, and we'll talk more about this as well as we get into this, is that whole change in culture. And that's a big part of how our organization is structured. So we have different business units, as I showed you before, aviation, automation, so forth. And so I have a chief who reports to me who's aligned to that business, who operates at the cadence of that business. Because I'll tell you what, our industrial business moves very differently than our aviation business. Why? Because one's heavily regulated, the other's not. And so there's a whole different style, whole different language and participation. So we are boutiqued, custom built to each one of them. The other thing that's really interesting about this is that we have top-down, bottom-up buy-in. Our organization, from the CEO to the first guy who comes in the door his first day, all buy into security. It's a cultural part of our, people say it's in our DNA. It really is in our DNA. And that took years to do, but it's super important because that's how people see value versus an expense to control, right? And most times, security organizations are an expense to control or to manage. If you're a value and you're adding value to the process, very different culture, very different approach. So each one of my teams has they have a penetration organization. So I have about 60 to 80 penetration testers because we test 100% of our products every release. So my penetration team is larger than most commercial penetration teams, just because of the sheer volume of products that we have and the sheer size of our company. That's okay, because that's what we're committed to, because we want to make sure it makes good sense. We also have what we call architects and what I call PSLs. PSLs are, we have sub-businesses within businesses, and so PSLs are like a mini chief, and they drive, again, culture and activity at each one of the businesses with the architects. And this is all baked into each one of the businesses. And like I said, it's that custom built, custom made for the business so that they can be successful. Because they are different. They operate differently. They operate on different tempos. And that gives them an incredible amount of speed, flexibility, and nimbleness. So one of the things I also want to make is we are very vested into a standard called IEC ISA 62443. And for the industrial world, automation, me, that's a great standard. It's 900 pages of cybersecurity guidance. Light reading, for those of you who are interested. All of our businesses, with the exception of our aero business, which is a little different, has a different set of standards, are certified to that standard. So our development process, we have more products certified to that standard than any other company in the world. And again, that's all part of that culture of really not just, hey, we do security and get things done and we have checklists. It's all the way into it makes our products better. We use it to actually help sell our products and the value our products bring because it creates trust, right? And if you think about all of your businesses, especially if you're in the software industry, guess what? Notice them. Are they reliable, durable, resilient? So, this is a pretty big effort. We have 9,000 developers, and of about 1,000 of those developers, we've taken and put them through, typically it's a 6-month to an 8-month training with 2 tests. You have to pass both, and we certify them, and that says that they are capable of doing certain security activities. And so that combination of skills with our team allow us to cover the incredible breadth of products and services our company provides. So it's a big effort. It's big, and now you sort of understand why my team's sort of sized the way it is. The other thing I'll also mention here is that this works for you whether you've got 10 people or whether you've got 300. The same models that we're going to talk about today, it's really based on how I started with 10 or 15. So it works. So as we sort of start off this little journey together on this discussion, I remind myself and all of you of this thought, which is really, you may not think you're ready or capable, right? This journey is not for everybody, and it's a little bit frightening, right? Because I knew when I started Honeywell exactly what I wanted to do. I knew how big and largely, directionally, what I wanted to get done. You become ready and capable through the journey. So, let's get started, shall we? So, one of the things that you have to do is understand where you are, and that's part of it is sort of being self-aware. And it's also being self-aware as your organization, your team, right? You as a professional leader, you're self-aware. You're here, you're learning these things. But now think about how self-aware is your organization. So this is important because now as you we go through this and you digest some of the things you learned today, the question comes up is, you got to be able to set the boundaries and the destination before you start the journey, right? And what I would tell you is, you don't go out and try to get to 300 people, day one. That's not going to happen. It's a multi-generation plan, right? Figure what you can do 6 months, 1 year, next year, year after, right? Build a plan, right? That's what's important. As leaders, that's our obligation, right? Is to have that vision and mission of how we want our organization to be and what kind of security we want the organization to have. That's your job. It's my job, right? So one of the things I feel like is one of the best techniques to doing this is creating a set of minimums, not maximums, minimums. And this kind of goes to the little, cartoon here, which is, I'm sure all of you have seen the, do you want the bronze level or the silver level of our service or the gold? Oh, the gold, yes. Well, I have a few other layers in there. Dirt and rust. Because my point here is that in some companies, they haven't done much. They didn't know. And that's okay. But you got to start somewhere. And so I call it, that's great, let's get to dirt. Right? Let's set that minimum set of things that you want to accomplish and get buy-in from all the leaders in your organization, just like you do in other parts of your organization, right? And set those minimums, right? And then use that to, and this is the trick. You use that first set of minimums to build muscle memory, not to actually just get the minimums. I mean, you'll get the minimums. They all have to be really easy to do. But it's about building the muscle memory and the mental memory that the minimums have to be done, always. And you build that into your organization culturally such that it becomes part of the fabric of how people do development. And then over time, you add more to your minimums. So minimums 1.0, minimums 2.0, minimums 3, so forth and so on. Wonderful, truly wonderful way of getting it, because minimums is easy. Oh, did you do the minimums? Think about that, just what I said. You're talking to your CTO or your boss. Did you do your minimums? Well, that sounds like if you didn't, why am I talking to you? You see how that, just the simplicity of the words is what I'm getting to. It's about making that simple linkage to, a complex goal in a word. Minimum sounds like that's, well, man, if you haven't done the minimums, why as a developer are you here? And I don't need to teach leaders about minimums, because they'll go, oh, those are minimums. Okay, well, we should be doing those, right? Yeah, exactly. You build this intellectually into your program, it pays dividends like you would not believe. But it's, again, using the words are really important, because that's how you shift the culture. And as you move through this, right, understand, instrument it so you understand what the cost of doing it is, right? So that you can articulate, because trust me, people will ask, oh, wait a minute, how much is that costing me to do? Well, typically it's about $20 per release. Oh, well, that's not bad. Okay, I can afford that, versus, oh, well, I have 2 million releases a year, and it's, some incredible number. Put it in context, is my point, right? But know what your numbers are and be able to articulate them simply and clearly, right? And then, to me, one of the most important parts is train. Train early, train often, over-educate, over-communicate on what how you're initializing your program and trying to change the culture. Create your message, your vision and mission, educate, share it everywhere, and then train everybody around them so that they understand it way before you actually get started. That's huge, because I run into this all the time, where budget issues, whatever, training getting done or got done like 2 months or a month before, or a month or a week before something was being rolled out. And everybody's upset because they didn't feel like they understood what was going on. The whole point here is you want people to know the unknown, right? You want to educate them so this is not something that's unknown. So let's talk a little bit more about the minimums a bit. So again, like I said, got to be this tall to ride the ride, right? And you want to set those minimums just like you do in your, I'm sure all of you have things like MFA, you've got password policies, right, for how you operate your business. All I'm saying is take those same sorts of things and create them for your products. Make sure that they are things that are easily articulated and obvious, that you could share with your 16-year-old son or daughter or a 50-year-old CEO, and they would all go, yeah, that makes sense. I understand that. Again, it's about that universality of message and good communication, because that's how you influence. And a couple of examples I threw in here is 100% scan, DAS, and SAS tools. Now, that's a lot of words, a lot of jargon. I wouldn't put that in the statement. There's other ways to get it, but since I'm in this crowd, I'm using terms, so fewer words on a slide. Threat model. including privacy. Have a threat model. Threat model seems good. I should have a model of what threats might happen. Yeah. OWASP, top 10 remediation. Top 10 risks that are known to public. We should probably protect against those. Yeah, makes sense. Great. Those are simple ones, but they're useful. And my point is, you set those bars and get people to do it. And then you build upon that as you go forward. Now, the really fun part is, how do you really get business aligned to owning this? And this is enforcement. So one of the things we haven't talked about yet, but I mentioned earlier, is something called CTO sign-off. So we do thousands of releases a year. 100% of those releases are signed off by the CTOs. 100%. And oh, by the way, it's like a wet signature, like DocuSign. And part of the reason why we do that is accountability. And so we have this process by which the developer turns in his work, finishes his release, goes into GitHub, and there's a whole release strategy. And his manager is signing off on his code, saying, yeah, I understand the risks that are inherent to that software, because we have tools that tells him, and I agree with that. And then it goes to their CTO. Right? And there's obviously people on my team that are also signing off in that process as well. Nice thing is, some developer who's trying to skirt the edges because he stayed up too late last night, whatever, tries to put in code that's bad. Well, you're going to turn in bad homework because everybody's going to see your F, including your boss's boss. Is that cool? Probably not. And that cultural change shifted fundamentally how the company thinks about risk and understands accountability. Now, it's not an easy thing to do, to change that piece of culture, but it is very doable because we've done it. And we've had that 7, 8 years. That literally shifts where the responsibility happens. It also shifts the value discussion as well. Because now the company values the quality of their work because they're being held accountable for that quality of their work, their releases, just like bugs. Because most vulnerabilities are in fact bugs. So this is a really key point in how you shift culture in a company from being a coin-operated, transaction-driven process to a well-integrated program that is truly secure, right? And if you want to move away from being coin-operated, sort of transactional organization to one that's, fully integrated, that's seen as a value, these are the techniques to do it. This is probably the most, if you take away nothing today other than this, you're going to be 100 miles ahead. Because the more you can incorporate this type of technique, and again, there's different ways of doing it, but holding the people who write the code accountable for the quality of their code is important. And yes, there's tools like, Copilot, GitHub Copilot and others that help developers do better code, which is great, love it. Makes my job easier. But at the end of the day, it's still about the quality of the code, and that makes secure code easier. So the next conversation comes up is, we don't have the money for this. It's interesting, lovely discussion, but we don't have the money. It's not. And I hear that a lot. Like, or as I jokingly said, we have to have a bake sale to do security. One thing, having been in executive organizations, both in General Electric and now Honeywell, is a truism. There is funding. It's just not going to be funding you, right? Or your problem. And you go, well, wait a minute. Why not? Well, there's really generally 2 reasons. One, you didn't articulate or explain the problem well enough that they understood it to prioritize it high enough to do something about. Whose fault is that? That theirs or yours? The other is you did, and guess what? There are other problems, and they are more important than yours. That's okay too. But the first one is what we're going to talk about. That is our job. Our job is to become very good communicators. And here's a new one you probably not thought is part of your job. Influencers. That's right. Every single one of us have to be influencers. We have to influence the corporation, the organization to do the right thing and to fund and support the needs of the business. That's our job. And oftentimes it's a real kind of nuanced moment where everybody's like, well, wait a minute, I'm really technical, I'm really good, I got my CSSP, and this is my space. I'm cool with that, I get it. But you need these soft skills to be a successful leader. And if you don't have them, you need to get them. Because this is the only way we're going to solve that $10.5 trillion competitor that you're working against. So, part of it is speaking the business's language, right? Today, you heard great discussions about SaaS, DaaS. You heard great discussions about risk and the tools of risk and management. Awesome. But that means nothing to a product manager. And you got to learn their language. You got to learn the CFO's language. You got to learn all the nuances. And more importantly, you have to learn their rituals, right? Guarantee in your business, there's somebody every year doing budget. And it happens probably the same time every year. Right? There's probably another time in your business where they do some sort of look ahead every year. Maybe it's a 3-year look ahead. It's just before they do the budget season for that next following year. Well, guess what? You should learn those rituals. Yeah, they're not cyber rituals. They're not, risk management stuff. Why should I pay attention? Because that's how you communicate with the rest of the business. And you better learn those rituals, get good at them, and more importantly, be early. Be early. Go figure these things out. Figure out what your budget needs to be before your boss asks for it. Integrate that in so that you're early. Because I'll tell you what, it's a little bit like coming to lunch today. People who come in first get the best spots, and they get the food that's freshest, right? People who come in last, not so much. Budget works the same way. No matter what people say, if you get there early, you might actually get what you asked for. You get there late, you're sure not going to get it. So these are things you have to think about. And again, it goes back to, it boils down to the data that you have and the story you have and your ability to communicate them effectively to the people to understand the risk that they face. And it is a story. People call it, corporate theater. Well, maybe. At the end of the day, if it means protecting my company, I'll come up here and do the dance. Because that's what's needed, because I care, and so should you. Right? That's part of what we have to do. The last piece I'll also make is, part of what I see is my partners is not just engineering, legal, HR, finance. These people don't do anything with cyber. But man, guess what? They all know my mission and vision. They all understand what I'm trying to achieve. Why? Because I take the time to refresh their knowledge all the time. Pull them in. Hey, let's go have lunch. Let me show you what I'm doing, what I've been doing. They benefit from it because they want to know the business just as much as I do. And so if I can articulate that and help them, they help me. Because guess what? I'm sure you have the same thing. Those people go into meetings I'm not part of, and decisions that impact me are happening in some room, someplace. And if those people all understand my mission and vision and the passion, guess what? They're going to vote for this. They're going to say, this is the right thing to do. We should do it. Right? So it's about creating that resonance around your programs, your strategies, and that's how you build better. So there's an old GE-ism. I'm also a Six Sigma black belt, and like old school black belt. And there's a saying is, you cannot improve that which you cannot measure. So great. Where are you on your journey, right? And so this is, a simple, very simplified, character, but it gives you some feel for, are you in that sort of reactive side in terms of security and what you're doing in your programs, or are you on the proactive side? If you're on the reactive side, you can sort of gauge where you are, sort of ad hoc, and maybe some of you are in the sort of the middle ground of sustaining, right? Where you've got a decent program, so 4 or 5 people doing the Lord's work, and solving, cybersecurity issues and keeping the business running. It's all beautiful, awesome, but it's not enough. It's anemic, right? It's not getting and solving this stuff, and you're just waiting for the other shoe to drop when some ransomware attack, right? And so how do you shift over that gap into robust and into your DNA, right? A lot of that is about the things that we've been talking about, right? Creating the right culture, creating the right mission and vision, communicating that, building that, setting the stage while you're in the stage you're in so that you can move forward. And, it is scary. It's okay, the job's good, go home every night, stuff's, it's all sort of maintained and even strain. I respect that. But at the same time, you have to sort of step back and again, look and see, is it enough? Is it secure enough? Is it where we need to be to protect ourselves? And if it's not, as we like to say, lean in. Lean in and do more here. And that's what a lot of our program is all about, is leaning in to help our businesses release products securely. And again, there's different set of skills for different stages. And especially as we're talking, because I can't determine what everybody's level, so each of you are on your own journeys, but I'm sure you can find your spot on this curve. And for those of you that are sort of on the lower side of the curve, it's about creating that mission and vision. For those that are on sort of towards the proactive side of that curve, it's about elevating your message. It's about changing the dynamics of how your business sees security and the risks that are involved, which again goes back to accountability. Like, where's that risk coming from? And are those people and the people responsible for that accountable? So, okay, got to feel, so how do I sort of measure myself? Well, I love this tool. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of BSIM, Building Security into Maturity Model. It's a neat program, 30 grand. So everybody in this room, your company can afford it. And what it does is they go out, they'll come to your shop, and they do this analysis against all of these capabilities, and then measure you against, how well they see as sort of the max case of doing all these different things, and then compare you against 100 other companies and 100 other industries. Ooh. That's kind of cool. And you start, out of that data, you can look and see where you are. And you get a really good grasp of not only how well am I doing, but also what is everybody else doing? And because it does, it's sort of like, if you're here, this is good, this is great, this is awesome, this is, best in class. And, where are you? And it gives you not just, your sort of, control that you're applying, but it shows you what those controls are for best in class. So it actually is kind of a neat little roadmap to go, okay, I know what best in class is now. Great. I can actually go do that. And now you also get a third-party piece of information that you can bring to your leadership, to your board, and say, this is where we are. Is this okay? And by the way, it may be. It may be. And that's okay too. but it may not be. And you can articulate what areas you want to pay attention most to, because it has some really cool spider charts as part of this. But I found these things incredibly useful. Like I said, 30 grand, nothing. For that kind of knowledge, and then to be compared against other industries, I mean, it's an easy win. So I would urge you guys to part with a buck and go do that, because it's a really simple way. And you can also have it go after your industry, because they've done this. BSIMs have been around for, I want to say 20 some odd years. They have 20 years of data of these assessments. And we're in there all over the place, because I do BSIMs every couple of years, because I want to know how good am I against my peers. So let's talk about SDLC, because Secure Software Development Lifecycle. I'm sure all of you have one, or hope. I aspirationally believe all of you have one. This is very close to ours. There's some other stuff in it, but I wanted to bring this up because this is kind of the religion for us. This is the beginning and the end, and the process we go through. And as excuse me, as you see, it starts off every single time with architect, cyber architect. It starts with, are you trained? So not just my people, but the engineers. Have you participated in your training? If you haven't, you can't. Got to be this tall to ride the ride, And then there's a preliminary risk assessment, threat model, and you go through the requirements. And they're just woven into the development process right from the beginning, and stuff gets done. Right? Nobody's upset. It's done when it needs to be done, and we go through and we do security reviews. And oh, by the way, am I QA? Am I quality? No, but man, do we exercise the living crud out of our quality of our products. So in a way, it kind of is. Right? And that's also an added value to the business, because we catch things that quality may not. They love that, especially when we do pen testing. And then as we get through, as you prepare for deployment into production, we actually go through our CTO sign-up process. And that can take as little as a few minutes or longer, depending on how many questions get asked. But again, this is all part of that process that we go through. So as we move through that, and this is the important part, hopefully as we sort of start to summarize these ideas, is being seen as a value versus a burden, right? A lot of old school security programs, it's a burden. It's a cost to be controlled. I want a 10% haircut every year, You're not going to survive that game. Right? Security doesn't work that way, especially when you're competing against a $11 trillion industry, right? It just doesn't work that way. So you have to have rules of engagement. And this is, again, where I'm trying to remind everybody, invest in those relationships, right? Put the accountability where it belongs when it comes to your software and your software development. Learn the languages of your business and don't be late. Always be early. And I bring this page back up because it's so important to summarize these 3 points. Again, it comes back to if you take nothing else away, remembering these 3 things is super important to how we think about how this process is. So, there we go. The other big piece is as you get buy-in in your organization, people are starting to support you, and you may be growing your team. Let me just tell you. Culture is everything to us. And if you don't have that passion for that culture, your people will not either. Right? You personally have to embody these things. It's not enough to be, put it on a slide someplace. You have to live it. And if you don't live it, they won't either. So exclusivity kills. Nothing kills, development, innovation, like exclusivity. What does that mean? Arrogance is exclusive behavior. Exclusivity of, it's just me, not you. Right? That's not helpful. And you probably have some of that in your organizations, because I've been doing cybersecurity for a long time, and there is a lot of interesting people in our community. that's okay. I'm one of them. I'm part of that community. But my point is, you have to draw those things out. And you have to have a way to help people to not have those behaviors, right? I built a whole training program, it's called LEAP. And it's nothing but teaching people the soft skills. Communication, how to work with others, influence, and my personal favorite program, CAP, Change Acceleration Process. Excellent ways to teach people how to navigate the unknown and help businesses be successful. Inclusivity creates, drawing people together, working across the table. All of that is got to be part and part of your vision and mission of how your team's going to operate. Respect and grow the technical and the emotional skills. These are critical skills for you to shift out of being, reactive to proactive to DNA. Right? Include things like culture and team building as part of your own goals and your staff's goals. So make it part of their review process. Did you participate? Did you do these things? How well did you bring your behaviors? Right? So build that community of change agents into your organization, because that's critical. Because if you really think about what we do as cybersecurity experts in this room, you're all change agents. You just may not know that. Your job is to help other parts of the business understand the risks and help them navigate that change. And now, if that's new to you, you should go spend some time, read books around change acceleration process or change culture. And there's lots of books, you don't need me to tell you about them. But that whole process of change management and how people do it, huge part of our job. May not have known it till today, but it's super important. And I really, truly believe that the key factors in building my community revolve around the blend of skills, cyber skills, product knowledge, and trust. Right? And it's because you have that culture, you create the trust. And it creates the dependency by the business on you because they trust and respect the value that you bring. Mixing that with your technical acumen and your deep knowledge of the business products, man, you're awesome. You're a value, not a burden. Right? That's how you change the way people think. So, great. I've given you a lot to think about, but I also want to add this one little, nugget. This is phase 2. We just finished talking about phase 1. Phase 2, I'm not going to go into a lot of details here, but I want to highlight this because these are the things you want to think about as you're sort of getting through your sort of journey. And phase 2, where should the community belong, right? Wherever today is wherever you are, right? And that's not going to change. But maybe a year or 2 years down the road, it may need to change because the evolution of your structure and the culture you've built may make it more, may make more sense for it to be part of, engineering, because maybe it was in IT, or maybe you're in engineering. Maybe it's time for you to move to legal, right? There's some natural times in those things, and my point is, you want to keep those in your mind. That those are natural things of how your organization may migrate within the organization. And that's okay. But, oftentimes, especially where security is baked into some IT function, that doesn't survive in this sort of model very well. Because the costing part, which is what I'm about to get into, is, here's the fun part. 100% of my organization, I don't own that budget. None of it. That budget, I gave it back to all the businesses that I support, and they vote with their feet. If they don't like my work, they stop paying me, and my team goes away. Literally. 100% liquidated. And so only thing I have at my level is their census. They all report to me, but the actual budget, the dollars that pays their salaries, that's in those businesses' pockets. And so they come to me, and if they want more or need more or have different needs. And guess what? I get a call just, actually it was Friday. One of the CTOs, hey, Matt, I need 3 more architects. I need a couple of pen testers. Can you help me out? Think about that in your jobs. When was the last time anybody came to you from the business and said, can you hire a bunch of security people to help me? Don't happen too often, does it? Well, in our world, it does. Because we're very lean, surprisingly, you might think. We're very lean in our organization, but it's integrated so well that that's exactly, and we dynamically scale to their needs. Again, custom built to their needs. And that makes a huge difference. But again, that's not where you want to show up tomorrow, because it takes some time and trust and a lot of work that you're going to have to do to get to that point. But I wanted you to know about it so that you understand that that's an opportunity that you can arrive at as you get into sort of your phase 2 of this. And that kind of goes to the who gets the bill. So, as we're sort of closing up on things, I always like to leave things with people of like, all right, great, we've had a good discussion. What can you do next week to change and to evolve your program? What can you do in the next 3 months? What can you do in the next 6? So this is just, quick ideas for you guys to think about. Assess where you are. Figure out what you learn and whether this makes sense for you, right? And what areas, again, it's about being self-aware as a leader, as an individual, and as a business or a function. And I would urge all of you to take a moment, think, does this make sense for me? Because it may not, it's okay. Identify your roadblocks. What are they? Political, budget, structural, and sort of think through them. Think what would great look like for you. Identify your key stakeholders and your champions. Do you know them? Do you spend time with them? When's the last time you called them? And just shared your vision, right? In the first 3 months, self-assess. Like I said, it's $30,000. How hard can that be, right? Get on their schedule, have it done, see where you are. Then what's your story? Like, work on the message, the brand of your organization, your team. What's your message? And how does that story convey urgency and intensity about what needs to happen to the organization to protect it better, right? Go work on that. And then build and reinforce those relationships, right? And in the last 6 months, budget. Define a budget. Sit down and figure, okay, now I understand where I want to go. Here's the cost I think it's going to be for next year. And remember when I talked about, rituals? Be early. Walk in. That's what I want to do. Be early. So identify your minimums, right? So those are some things for you guys to think about. Any questions? Yeah. Well, now I got to find a mic.
Bring the mic over. Pardon me? Oh, who is it? Sorry.
Thank you. I enjoy your presentation. It was very informative. So you have emphasized on influence creation, and then also you was mentioning about the testing of the products. Mm-hmm. So what type of the tools you are using for testing? Because these are very important, because these are also evolving with the stage of this AI era. So how you are managing those tools and how you feel that those are current?
Yeah, so one of the neat things in our company is we have Jira everywhere. So 100% of all of our development is done in Jira, which is awesome. Because a lot of your companies, and companies I've come from, you didn't have the luxury of just one. It's like 5 of everything, right? All of ours is Jira, which is great. So it makes my automation tooling much easier, frankly. And so we're a Black Duck shop. So if you ever, I love Black Duck. It's a great product. Vericode's also awesome. I love them too. Pick your relationships with your vendors. Swapping vendors for these types of tools are expensive and time consuming. Pick the one that works for you and then build your relationship with them. BDH is coming out with some really great AI technologies that are awesome. We're also GitHub Copilot shop, so our developers use Copilot quite a bit, and we've seen some great benefits. I don't know about the rest of you, but I see Claude. Man, that's really strikingly interesting because I think that is, my own opinion, is perhaps better than any code tool I've seen. So that's one to pay attention to. But for us, like I said, BDH, Coverity are sort of our core, binary scan, SAS, DAS sorts of things. We have other tools like SD Elements that helps us aggregate all the requirements and then shoehorn them into their NPI cycle, and also allows us to monitor that as it gets rolled in. And we can also sort of look at the end and go, oh yeah, that's been done or not been done. Does that answer your question? Yes. Great. Any other questions? Yeah. One moment, please. Your call is important.
Hello. Thank you. Thanks again for the presentation. I'd like to double-click on the financial piece of it, how we can start to justify budgets, and how are some ways we can talk that language and learn that language?
Great question. You saw on one of my slides is we talk about comparing. A comparison is everything in this space, right? The more that you can compare to your peers, like Schneider Electric, Siemens, I know their organizations real well because I know my peers in those organizations real well. So we share a lot of information, like I know how many people doing their job. And so I use that, and I use ratios. And you'll see that on some of the slides where we talk about 1 to 60, like how many people, and again, BSIM will also give you some of that data. It's like, how big are other organizations of your size? And this gives you data to then articulate the financial portion of that discussion. Because at the end of the day, about 80% of a product security program is human, right? There's only a small piece of software. It's mostly humans. And so as a result, it really boils down to how do you articulate the cost of these people and where those people are, what part of the world they're operating in, right? And those are all costs that are easily managed, understood. But to your point, you have to take that kind of information, articulate it into the risks that your business is facing, and this is how you navigate it, and using BSIM and other tools and your peers. Like, oh, by the way, Emerson's got this many people, and they've got this great program, and and a lot of people publish their own security programs. Siemens is great about this, and everybody does, and that's awesome, right? Leverage that, and to demonstrate what other people are doing, and that's how you shift finance teams to understand and buy in. Does that make sense?
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
Is this on? Okay. Hi, Jeff Sass from Adobe. Great talk. Thanks for doing it. I want to just, first of all, thank everybody in this room for doing all the incredible cybersecurity work you all do. So thank you. Second, you were talking about AI. Just real specifically just what I'm seeing right now is that AI is enabling everybody, not what we traditionally called engineers to be writing code. What are your thoughts on how we train them, help them understand, put in processes in place where the code that is written by non-trained traditional engineers are actually going through the whole process?
So I have a longer answer for you and when we get together in a larger discussion, because there's a really good point. But the short answer I'd give you is this. Every one of you are developers. You just didn't know it, right? You're all using some form of AI, whether it's Copilot or something today, probably, right? And you're all going to and are already experiencing exactly what you're talking about. The beauty of AI and these other technologies is it is writing the code, so it's taking the human out of it. So it is removing a lot of the, like, I don't have to learn Ruby Rails, or I don't have to learn Java or C++. I just say, these are the features I want, and it produces it. And the code is generally okay. We still find a bunch of vulnerabilities because it was trained by who? Humans. That's why I think you have to be, you fight AI with AI, right? You bring in tools like, Black Duck and some of their new AI tools, or you bring in tools like, Claude and others to help them be better. And that's the way you do that, because there's no human scaling in that game at all. And so you have to sort of shift culturally and organizationally how you improve it. And you need to improve it at the developer, not at the security architect level, because if it gets to him, it's way too late. Right? You've got to do it down here and do it fast. Does that make sense?
We
Any
are
other questions?
actually out of time for
Oh.
questions. I
all right.
hate to say, but Matthew will be joining our panel today, so everybody, how about a round of applause for
Thanks,
Matthew?
everybody. You bet.
We could have sat here for another hour and listened and taken questions, but I don't think you guys want to be here till 8 o'clock tonight. But we're going to take a 30-minute break so the staff can come in and clean up. There's coffee and, excuse me, there's coffee and dessert over in the vendor room where the breakfast was. We will meet back here at 1:45. Is that right? Yeah, 1:45. And I'll do the spin wheel again. We hit 3 $100 winners, so we're on a roll today. I did call a couple of names of people that weren't in here. This is a great time to continue getting your prize card signed. And the way they have to, I also forgot to tell you guys, stop by Proof Point and pick up your drink tickets because the bar will be open later before the panel, so you don't want to have to stand in that long line. So grab your drink tickets for the bar because the bar opens like right before the panel around 3:45. So I'll see you guys back here at 1:45. And thank you again, Matthew, for that great keynote.